You've joined Prophecy Talk for analysis of world events and unfolding Bible prophecy, brought to light by prophecy expert and author Erika Grey of www.erikagray.com.
Then the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, "Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates." So the four angels who had been prepared for the hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind. Now the number of the army of the horsemen was 200 million. I heard the number of them, and thus I saw the horses in the vision. Those who sat on them had breastplates of fiery red, hyacinth blue, and sulfur yellow, and the heads of the horses were like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. By these three plagues, a third of mankind was killed by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which came out of their mouths. Years ago, Hal Lindsey's book, The Late Great Planet Earth, in it he identified the army in Revelation 9:15-19, which I just read to you, as China's, because China's population was so large, their army numbered 200 million, and no other army in the world was that large. But China makes no sense, because we see China entering at the end of Armageddon in Revelation 16:12, which tells us, "Then the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up, so that the way of the kings from the east might be prepared." China also does not make sense to come during the tribulation, because the beast, the final world empire, is going to be so powerful, it makes no sense for the Chinese to come out of nowhere and invade the world where the Antichrist will have such a firm grip. What does make sense is for China, along with Russia and the nations of the world, to come against the Antichrist when he is in Jerusalem in the Battle of Armageddon to defeat him, because at that point he will need to be defeated. Remember, he rises the EU to its pinnacle of power, and nations trade with his empire, and there are good relations. It is at midpoint that when he steps into the Holy of Holies and declares himself as God, that the great tribulation begins, and he institutes the mark of the beast, which he will have power to do, because at this time his empire will hold the world's reserve currency and will have the leading say in world institutions, and he will be the strongest economically and politically and militarily, and the world will have to go along with his policies to benefit economically. Remember, all nations are now connected economically. And in my next week's broadcast, or my next broadcast, you will learn about the four horsemen and how this relates and the position it's going to put the European Union in at that time. And we already know that the European Union is the final world empire. Now, once the Great Tribulation begins and the Antichrist goes forth to conquer with great fury to conquer, we are told in Isaiah 10:14, "And my hand hath found as a nest the riches of the people, and as one gathereth eggs that are left, have I gathered all the earth, and there was none that moved the wing, or opened the mouth, or peeped." We know the Antichrist will control the Middle East region, and some of this area will be won during this conquest. Egypt will come into his hands during this time. When the Antichrist sets himself up in the Holy of Holies as God, at that point he seeks to annihilate the Jews and all religion upon the face of the earth. This is good reason at the end for the armies of the world to decide to come against him at the Battle of Armageddon. So, who is the army in Revelation 9? It is the army of the beast. In the four horsemen of Revelation 6, we are shown that the four horsemen, and the first horse is the prince on the white horse who goes forth to conquer. While we know it is not China, there are only two possibilities that it can be. It can be a demonic army, or can possibly be the army of the Antichrist, which I've already stated. And the reason that I believe it's the Antichrist also is in the description. The heads, it states in Revelation, the heads like the heads of lion. Now we are told that the beast has a mouth like a lion, and the colors of hyacinth blue and sulfur red are the colors of the European Union's military flag. There is also fiery red, or the word means shining like fire. The Hebrew word for red is perinos, and it means shining like fire, brimstone, sulfurous, jacinth. But so you've got this breastplate, shield of the hyacinth blue and sulfur yellow, and it shines brilliantly. The smoke, fire, and brimstone with power, and the mouth and tails sound like a belt-fed rifle. When a gun fires, we see fire and smoke. What is worth noting that while the three elements are related, in the Bible they were referred to as three separate plagues. Revelation 9:18 states, "By these three plagues was a third of mankind killed, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which came out of their mouths." Now this next verse sounds like a belt-fed rifle or a machine gun, and it reads, "For their power is in their mouth and in their tails, for their tails are like serpents having heads, and with them they do harm." Well, the heads is describing the actual bullets that make up a belt-fed rifle. That make up the ammo belt. In Revelation 9, we see that the Antichrist army is 200 million men and is one of the plagues of God. The four angels accompany this army and lend it their strength, and 1/3 of the world's population is killed by this army. When we go back to the four horsemen of the Revelation, we see that war is also a part of that campaign. But this one is different and separate. We do not know the reason for it, but we do know that Daniel describes the beast as dreadful and terrible with great iron teeth, and he has crushing power. Now, my feeling for the reason for it is probably going to be when the abomination of desolation takes place, Antichrist sets himself up as God. He then goes to annihilate world religion or anybody that believes in religion, and this is going to be done worldwide. And we're also told that he, as the time draws closer to the end, he goes forth with great fury to conquer and destroy. So in conclusion, I want to say that it is my view that this passage is talking about an army. It is not the Chinese army, but the European Union's army. Now today, the European Union has 505 million citizens. During the tribulation, we know that some of the Middle East countries will be in its sphere of influence, including Israel. Its population will be greater than it is today and can possibly produce an army of 200 million men. Today, the EU has the world's largest standing army when you take the militaries of each of the member countries and add them together. While the EU does not officially have a military, the provision for one was laid out in the Lisbon Treaty. And the next treaty, the one that will be negotiated in 2015, EU leaders have already proposed giving the EU a full defense arm in that treaty. Now, the horsemen of 200 million can be the number of heavenly horses that are released and do not correspond with the number of the army, but my hunch is that they do. Right now, the European Union military staff exists, and when you add all of their forces together, you come up with about 5 million men. Now, this is personnel aged 17 to 45, active reserve, and paramilitary. So during the tribulation, if this army is in fact the EU army, it will triple. And this brings us to another question. How big will the EU empire become? And that is the topic for another commentary, but I can tell you that the EU is going to be monolith. It is going to be huge. And we know that because it's going to have control of all of Europe, Middle East region, North Africa, probably will extend a bit into India as well, or go into India. And we still do not fully know where the U.S. is going to be in prophecy. And I have entertained the idea that the U.S. may join with the European Union, or I know definitely will be in a close alliance with. Well, this has been Erika Grey with this week's commentary.
Would you like to understand the book of Revelation and how in no uncertain terms the European Union is the final world empire that will launch the Antichrist? By Erika's riveting work, The Seat of the Antichrist, Bible Prophecy and the European Union. It's available in paperback or Kindle. You can purchase it on Amazon or from her website at www.erikagray.com. You're listening to Prophecy Talk with Erika Grey. Jesus closes the book of Revelation, declaring, "Behold, I am coming quickly." John 20:21 records, "These things are written, that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name." John 3:15 promises that whoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Trust in Jesus today. He lives, and he is returning. Thank you for listening today. Tune into Prophecy Talk next week with author and prophecy expert Erika Grey. In the meantime, be sure to visit Erika Gray's website at www.erikagray.com.